Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemens, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. This is Life with Jason Clemens, DC, and we are live from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas. We're on 98.7 Walk by Faith at 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. I think that's what they're still calling it. I hope everything's good. I hope you guys had a good week. We're live on all of our social media pages as well. Thanks for the comments yesterday. Thanks for watching the show. I hope you got some good stuff out of this week. We basically broke down The End of Alzheimer's by Dale Bredesen and added a little bit of Change Your Brain, Change Your Life with Daniel Amen. And so I thought both of those the shows so far were pretty good on that. Monday's show we did Taking Health to Church with Audacious Claims, and I thought it was such a bad show. I went home and just erased it. I just deleted it as soon as I got home because I didn't do a very good job on Monday, and that's ridiculous. So we'll try again next Monday and see if we can do better. But we had a good week. We had a good week with some new patients. We had a good week with the people who are doing wellness. It's always so fun when you're doing wellness because you take care of people for a long period of time. And you see their progression over time, and you see I'm in my 21st year of seeing patients, and I've taken care of some of these people for 15, 16 years now, maybe even longer, that are still getting adjusted, and they're healthier. They're just as healthy or healthier today than they were 15 or 16 years ago. And I would challenge you, and I would ask you that same question: are you just as healthy or healthier than you were 15 or 16 years ago? And if you're not, would you like to be healthier 16 years from now? Because you can be. You can get in and hang around. I heard a guy say one time, if you stick your hand in a pot of glue, you're going to get it on you. All right? That's the way it is. So when you hang around with wellness people, you tend to get more well. I guess if you hang around with rich people, you get richer. If you hang around with Christian people, you get more Christian, right? Well, if you hang around with well people who do well things, who talk about well things, then it's just part of what happens, and you get better and better as the years go by, and it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're 60 years old and you want to be better when you're 76, then we can get you started. If you're 76 and you want to be better than when you're 92, then we could get you started. So that's what we do at the Rock, and it's a lot of fun. We have lots of conversations during the week, and we have a lot of cool things that we talk about. And tonight we're going to talk about eyes, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons that we do some of the things in the office, and why we use the eyes so much. And we used. I showed you. Let me see if I can find it right quick. Let me see. Yeah, I showed you the homunculus. Yeah, this little dude right here. I showed you this little guy last week, or maybe it was at the end of Monday night's show that I went home and erased. So if you didn't watch the show live, then you didn't see it. If you listened to it live, then you might have gotten to see it. Or at least you got to hear about it if you were on the radio. But so I showed you this little picture last week of this little guy right here, and this little guy is called the homunculus, and the build of this little guy is based on the number of neurons in the brain associated with either sensory or motor cortex that are assigned to that particular area of the body, right? So if you were to look at the brain in the motor cortex and the sensory cortex, and you were to count how many neurons there are in that area that are assigned to your fingers, and then you were to count how many neurons there were in that area that were assigned to your elbow, and how many were assigned to your knee or your foot, and you were to build a little human out of that, or a model to represent in a uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it's equal to the number of neurons there, um, in proportion. That was the word I was looking for. In proportion, if you were to build a little human, or draw a picture of one in proportion, what you would see is a human they'd have big old lips and a big old tongue. They'd have a little old skinny neck and skinny arms, and then you get to their hands and they'd have big old giant hands. And meaning the number of neurons assigned to the hands in the brain outnumber the number of neurons assigned to the elbow and the knee and the ankle way, way more. The number of neurons assigned to the lips and the tongue outnumber your arms and legs way, way more. Because we use our hands and our mouth to set ourselves up in our environment, to learn our environment. So we use this information, not just from a sensory standpoint, but from a motor cortex standpoint as well. We spend a lot of time talking, right? And we use our hands. I'm using my hands constantly right now. I'm moving and I'm getting sensory input. And like a little child, they'll pick up something, they'll get it, and they'll put it in their mouth, right? That's the first thing they want to do. They just want to put it in their mouth. Why are they doing that? Because that's the highest concentration of sensory input that we have in the body is in the hands and in the mouth. Does that make sense? Okay, I hope it makes sense. But so that's what we do with the homunculus. Well, the eyes are part of the brain. If you listen to Dr. Huberman talk about that, he'll explain that. But you draw a brain, you really ought to draw a brain with eyes on it every time, because the eyes are part of the brain, and you're getting a lot of input from your eyes. So I've got a presentation, and this presentation belongs to Dr. Michael Hall at Brain DC. He is basically my neurology teacher. He wasn't my neurology teacher in school, but he was a neurology teacher in school before me and after me, and he is one of the smartest human beings on the planet when it comes to functional neurology, and he's the one that taught me all my functional neurology, along with MJ and Katia and Roswell and Dr. Fraley in Ruidoso. So that's where I learned the majority of what we do in the office with functional neurology. So Dr. Hall's been a huge impact in my life and in your life because of the work that he did in teaching me. So, there's a question. So these are slides that were part of the modules that we learned when I was taking the functional neurology course. So I want to make sure that I make that everyone knows that these slides are they're Dr. Hall's stuff. I'm just going to use a couple of them to just kind of prove the point and then share with you why we're using the eyes, okay? So how important are the eyes? Well, they're very important. Sight is your most dominant daytime sense. 40% of all nerve fibers to your brain come from the retina. Now think about that for a second, because your brain receives 3 trillion bits of information per second. So if you think about 40% of 3 trillion, that's a lot. And that's coming through your eyes. And so your eyes are receiving, like you really, unless you've studied it, you really don't understand how important your eyes are to your whole posture, to your movement, to your cerebellum, to your balance and coordination, to your safety. Your eyes are where you're going to get the initial stress response. It's going to come through your eyes, right? You're going to see something. It's going to scare you. And so 2/3 of electrical activity in the brain is devoted to vision when the eyes are open. And that came all the way back from the American Journal of Ophthalmology in 1957. 2/3 of electrical activity in the brain is devoted to vision when the eyes are open. So you got a lot of stuff going on inside your brain that's going through your eyes. And the eyes are very, very important. So because of that, last night when we were talking about Dr. Bredeson's book and why I enjoy that type of writing so much is because it allows the reverse engineering, and it allows you to figure out the things that are important, right? So if you just take that slide and you say sight is your most dominant daytime sense, 40% of all your nerve fibers come in through your retina, the nerve fibers to your brain, and then 2/3 of electrical activity in the brain is devoted to vision, then number one, testing the eyes and making sure the eyes are functioning properly ought to be part of every single exam that is done in every single doctor's office in every place on the earth. Because all of the things that we talk about, remember, we talk about sympathetic activity causes acid reflux disease. Overfiring of the right hemisphere decreases digestive function. Overfiring of the right hemisphere decreases left hemisphere parasympathetic function, which is responsible for tone around all your sphincters. Okay, so the little sphincter that runs between your stomach and your esophagus is parasympathetic, controlled dominantly by the left hemisphere. And now you've got this overfiring of the right hemisphere, which is now causing your acid reflux. So if you were to go to your gastroenterologist, wouldn't your gastroenterologist need to check your eyes to see how your brain's firing to determine whether or not the reason that you have acid reflux disease is because your right hemisphere is overactive? You would think. Wouldn't you think that would be like a legitimate question right there? Like that would be a legitimate question. Well, how about your testosterone's low? When you go see your pellet guy, how about that? Does your pellet guy check your eyes to see what's going on? No, that's not a common thing. We know that's not a common thing. But if you really want to know how the brain works, and if you really understand that the brain is controlling the body, and that abnormal function in the brain is resulting in abnormal function in the body, which we call symptoms, then you would understand, wow, we should look at those eyes. And I spend all day long now. It took me a long time to really grasp this idea, but I spend all day long with this little tuning fork in my hand. Like I'll use this tuning fork on patient after patient after patient. Just watch that, would you? Just move your eyes in all these different directions. And I want to show you tonight some of these slides that why that is, right? So when you're talking about the eyes and you're talking about the input from the eyes, then one of the things that is important is that only perfection is accepted. So your brain doesn't like blurriness. And all you guys that are over 50 or over 40, you really understand that, how irritating it is to try to read something that's blurry. Try to go into a restaurant and read a menu and you can't see it and you have to back it up and get it away from you. Or you're trying to type on your computer and you can't see the words and the words are all blurry. And then you get these ridiculous things called glasses and you have all kinds of different bifocals and trifocals and progressive lenses and you got all kinds of different things going on in your eyes and you're constantly moving your head up and down to try to get whatever distance you need focused on your eyes. Because why? Because only perfection is accepted when it comes to your eyes. Because your eyes don't want to deal with that blurriness all the time. It's irritating to the brain. And it's another one of those things when we go back to Hebrews 12, I believe it is, right? And we get rid of those things that bind us. I was adjusting a chiropractor today, and we were talking about the subluxation and the term subluxation. And he said, what is the definition of a subluxation? And can you even measure it or see it or detect it? And I was like, well, to me, subluxation is interference in the nervous system. And I can detect it by evaluating the malfunction of the nervous system. That's the way I can detect it. Can I actually detect it and measure it? Like, can I see a subluxation like I can see degeneration in your cervical spine? No, I can't see it that way. I have to use functional neurology. I have to be able to see, okay, wait a minute. Do you have a head tilt in one direction when you're standing there in your posture? Do you have internal and external rotation of your hands or your feet? What are you hunched forward? What are those things? Where is the, can you do this? Can you turn your hand back and forth over and over, like put your hands together, turn it over, put the palm in the back of your hand in your palm and go back and forth? Can you stick your hands out in front of yourself and then shake your fingers and shake your hands really fast? Are they equal on both sides? Can you close your eyes and step in place? And do you move when you step? Do you move in a right or left direction? Right? What's the soft palate of your mouth look like? Like, what's your pupillary light reflex? When I shine a light in your eye, one of my ladies today, she's older, and she's towards the end of her life. We'll just say it that way. When I started moving her eyes around to look, her pupils are just very, very constricted. And we've got some autonomic nervous system disruption going on right there when we're looking at that. So what we need with the eyes is we need perfection. We want those eyes to work. And when you're looking at someone's eyes, there's so many different examples of how the eyes will move and up and down and what's going on with the eyes. And then there's some really cool things that you can do. I'm working on purchasing this technology. It's on my wish list of things to do. But some of these technology where we can get goggles that have cameras in them, and then we can actually look at your eyes. One of the ones I want next is one that is completely dark, and now we can look at your eyes in the dark, and we can see how your eyes are moving. That's really why we try to use the right eye. I'll get to that in just a minute and explain that a little bit more. But so this is one of the slides that I wanted to go over. Let me move down just a little bit. There we go. And let's just start with this one right here. And let's look at the muscles of the eye. And where those muscles are, you've got these, you got the different muscles. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger for everybody. There we go. So that are attached to your eyeball. And the muscles that are attached to the eyeball, of course, have nerve supply. Each of those muscles has a nerve supply. That's pretty obvious, right? And then the end of the nerve is attached to the brain. That's one of the things that blows me away about Botox and the people that are Botox people, is that the idea, and I'm gonna draw this for a second. Because I just have a few notes on there, but the idea, I'm gonna move the brain over just a little bit, and then, but you've got these muscles around the eye, and they're connected to nerves. Okay, there's a nerve supply. There's a nerve supply to the muscles. Okay. Here's the thing that if you to kind of really get a grasp of this and to understand, a muscle, unless even if a muscle doesn't move unless a nerve tells a muscle to move. That's when a patient comes in and says to me, "Doc, is this a muscle thing or a nerve thing or a bone thing or what is this?" And it's like, well, you don't have a muscle thing without a nerve thing. First of all, if you say to me, "I have a tight muscle," how do you know it's tight? Well, I can feel it. There you go. If you feel it, it's a nerve, right? So, and why is it tight? What is causing it to be tight? What's the issue with it, right? And then if the muscles aren't functioning properly, then the joints aren't moving properly. So now we've got a joint problem. So now there's your bone problem because you have a joint problem, but you have a joint problem because you have a muscle problem or a ligament problem, and you have a nerve problem, and it's all a problem, right? You just can't separate those things out. So if you're going to fire a muscle, if you're going to contract a muscle, then, and that's basically all you do with the muscle, is you contract a muscle. It's either fully contracted or partially contracted, and the antagonist to that muscle is also being contracted. So if you've got a bicep and a tricep and you want to bend your arm, just bear with me on that. And if you want to bend your arm, bend your elbow, you got to fire your bicep, and you got to relax your tricep. And then if you want to straighten your arm out, then you got to fire your tricep and you got to relax your bicep. And those things are going at the same time. So basically all you're doing is contracting a muscle, either fully contracting it or decreased in contraction. So, but the point I'm trying to make is this, that the nerve that has attachment at the nerve muscle junction also has attachment somewhere else. And it ultimately is in the brain. That's the thing that is so important to us. This wire, this nerve that is innervating that muscle is also attached to the brain. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So you go get Botox around your wrinkles or whatever around your eyes. You don't like the wrinkles around your eyes or whatever. And so you're going to go in there and get Botox injections, and you're going to, what are you going to do to that? It deadens the nerve, right? It deadens the nerve. Well, where does it deaden the nerve? It deadens the nerve at the site of the injection. Well, what about the other end of the nerve? What happens to that part of it? It loses input too. So now what you've done is you've decreased input into your brain. Okay, it's not that big a deal. You got, 100 billion neurons in your brain. So maybe you just cut out, a couple million. What's a big deal, right? Well, to some people it's not a big deal, but to some of us it's a big deal. Like there's a brain that's going on right there, and we're turning them off. Okay, but that's the nerve. So when we evaluate the eye and we look at the muscles of the eye, we want to know, can you move the eye through all of the ranges of motion? So let me get back to this other slide. And we got to go way down to 100. See, there we go. So we've got the different muscles of the eye. And there's 3 nerves that are controlling these muscles. And there's a couple of nerves that their only job is to just control one of those muscles. So this lateral rectus muscle is under the control of one nerve. The superior oblique muscle is under the control of one nerve. And that's basically the entire function of those 2 nerves. Then the rest of those muscles are controlled under a different nerve. So you've got, think about how important your eyeball is. If the creator of the universe said, I'm just going to let one muscle, this little muscle on the outside of the eyeball, I'm going to build a nerve just for that. Like, whoa. Like your vagus nerve goes all the way down and attaches to almost all your organs all the way through your body. Right? Like your sciatic nerve it exits your pelvis, and then it branches off into a bunch of different places and runs your whole entire lower limb, basically. Like it runs down the backside of your limb. It's got all kinds of places. This little lateral rectus muscle has one nerve to it, and that nerve is just like firing that muscle. It's like, wow, that's kind of a important little thing there. So the first thing that we want to do, because in a functional neurology office, in my office, I'm not really a eyeball anatomy doctor. That's what your eye doctor is actually for. Your eye doctor is the one that's the eyeball anatomy doctor. And they're the ones that deal with all the anatomy of your eye. Like you get cataracts and that type of thing. Well, I'm not a cataract guy. I can't remove cataracts. That's not the thing that I'm doing. I just want to know, number one, are your eyeballs working properly? Can you move? If I was to cover up, first of all, if I just did it together and I was to just go through, you've seen the doctors go through this whole H in space thing, right? Where they make an H and they go up and down. And then we can start in the middle, we can go diagonally both directions. And then we can come right at you with it. Whoop, there it is. And we can come right at you with it. And then can you see it can you converge with it? And those are the things that we're wanting to do. Well, if we don't get those, if that's not happening, now we got a problem. And if it is happening, now we have a window into your spine. We got to take a break. We'll be right back, and we'll continue with talking about the eyes and the brain right after these messages. You guys stick around with us. Yeah, when we get back from the break, we'll pick up where we were, and we'll talk about this window that we've got into the brain and the different ways that we can stimulate the brain and how much time it takes to get all that done. So it takes some repetition to use the eyes. It takes some repetition to get the brain to make lasting changes. And I'm going to go into some of the things that we have, like the Brock string and the little red and white flag that we use. And, we've got the glasses that you guys use in the gym and the little laser glasses that we use. All that has to do with the eyes and the movement and the neck and the posture and trying to stimulate the brain and get the brain to fire through those pathways. And then fuel and activation. That is also one that's super important in fuel and activation. Fuel is it basically narrows down to be really, really simple. It narrows down to glucose and oxygen. You got to get the glucose and the oxygen to the cells. And then you got to get the activation to the neurons. Those are the things that you've got to get. If you want to keep your brain healthy, you got to get the fuel to it. It's why the nutrition is so important. Like if you want your brain to be better, you got to fuel it properly. And one of my ladies, she said the biggest thing that made a difference to her was when I said, what if you put unleaded gasoline in a diesel engine? And she's a farmer. She's a rancher lady. And so she was like, the day that I told her that, she was like, really made an impact on her in the way that she chooses to operate. Like it was a pivotal moment in her life because all of a sudden she could be like, oh, wait a minute. Like you wouldn't want to put unleaded gasoline in a diesel engine. It would ruin the engine. Well, the same thing happens to us when we put the wrong fuel in the engine. Hang on one second. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemens, DC. We're talking about how important the eyes are to the brain. And we're talking about the windows that we can use to get into. We use these the eyes as a window to help with the brain. It's one of those things that people really don't understand. I was telling Leslie after lunch today, we were driving home, and I've got a patient that I've been seeing for a while, and she's gone to physical therapy for an issue she's had, which I'm all for. I think it's great. No problem. I think physical therapists are smart people, right? But her physical therapist is a punk because that physical therapist told the patient that they shouldn't be getting a chiropractic care at the same time that they're getting physical therapy. And it's like, there's only two things there's only one logical explanation for a stupid sentence like that. And the number one is, if there's some sort of billing problem, if the patient's insurance, for whatever reason, has chiropractic and physical therapy at the same time, then I could see where the physical therapist might not want to use up. They're trying to get a treatment plan so that they can get their services paid for and make sure that there's no confusion as far as the insurance goes on if you use up their plan and they want to get paid. Fair enough. I think that's fair. If they want to get paid for their work and they don't want their benefits to be used up while they're getting adjusted, okay, that's fair enough. There's no other reason on earth that sentence makes any sense. And so it's either based out of pure arrogance or it's based out of stupidity. Either one. It's not even ignorance because they know better, because almost all of them are smart as heck. So but I don't even know why I got into saying that. It's I guess where I was going with that was if they say something like that, it doesn't even make sense, because some of the things that we're doing in the office, it's like the surgeon. Remember when we talked about that last week, when the surgeon says, don't you dare go to a chiropractor, you have rods and screws in your spine. And I'm like, okay, well, what if I sit here like this and I move this tuning fork up and down, and then I vibrate the tuning fork and put it on their fingertips, and then I vibrate the tuning fork and put it on their forehead or right up underneath their eye? Or what if we did movement with a red towel back and forth, and we were to do that? Or if maybe we put them in a pair of laser glasses and stood them on a pad in the gym, and then let them put the laser glasses on and see if they can move their head while they keep their balance. And I use an activator to adjust them. Or maybe I put some vibration on one side. I could turn this vibration on, and then I could use this left hand and I could vibrate this left hand, and then I can fire up that right hemisphere by using the vibration in the left hand. Is any of that have anything to do with rods and screws in your spine? Absolutely not. It doesn't have anything to do with that. And so this is the point of that is this. There's windows that we can use to get into this brainstem. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Your spine, and then this lower part of your brain before you get up into the cortex is where the nucleuses are of nuclei, however you say that, of the nerves that are firing the eyeball. And they're also firing lots of different other things like your smell and your taste and the muscles of your neck in some instances. And so there's things we can do to drive this. And immediate early gene response and a neurological change is what's going on with some of these receptors that we use. The chances of allowing genetic response is dependent on special summation or firing a pathway from several different types of stimuli. We can adjust you. We can use the vibration. We can use the tuning fork. We can use the laser glasses. We just got some fancy new lights that I'll have them up on Monday, that laser lights through the motion guidance system that we have, so that you can actually move the laser and hit the lights, and the lights will come on in different colors. And so that's going to be super cool as well. So there's lots of things we can do. Okay, what I really want to show you, and because one of my guys said today, it was like he was talking about how amazing it was. Let me see where we're at. Okay, now let me back up. So, because this is where I wanted you to see this right here. So, this is cortical control. Many areas work in concert to control movements of the eyes and to ensure visual stability. So, I have a person who's having a problem. Their eyeball, their left eyeball, is having a hard time with control. Their right side is nailing it, but their left eye, when they first came into the office, the left eye was way out here to the left. Like it was just kicked out way out there to the side. So remember what we said, that perfection is the only thing that's accepted with your eyes. And your eyes are yoked together. Like you turn your steering wheel in your car. When you turn your steering wheel, both wheels turn together. They're yoked together, right? There's an outside of your car and there's an inside of your car. So when you turn to the right, your right tire turns outside, but your left tire turns inside. Both of them are turning to the right. Both of them are turning to the left. That's called being yoked. And our eyes do the same exact thing. Like to perfection, they're yoked. Because we want one image. And what we're getting with our eyes is we're getting light hitting the eyeball. We're not getting an image hitting the eyeball. So when you look at something, if I look at that phone, or like I look at this computer screen, or if I was to look at this microphone, or I look at the camera, I'm not getting the image of the camera hitting my eyeball. What I'm getting is light hitting my eyeball, and then on the other side of the eyeball, once it goes through the nerve and it gets into the brain, now what happens is it sews that picture together, and now I actually get the image that I'm looking at. When we look at something, if I look at this pen, it's not coming to my eyeball as a pen. It's coming to my eyeball as refraction or reflection of light. Inside the brain is where it's all getting put together. And when it's amazing how it gets put together in a picture that's crystal clear if the eyes are working right. Right? So I wanted to show you some of these pictures tonight because I wanted to show you that there's a symphony of things happening behind the eyeball. There's a lot of stuff happening in the eyeball itself. That's the anatomy part of the eyeball. But on the back side of the eyeball, then all of a sudden, like there's a lot of stuff. Your entire brain is basically involved in one form or fashion with your sight. You're not just seeing an image, you're evaluating an image, you're coloring an image, you're sizing an image in spatial relationship to everything else. You're getting depth of the image, something that may be out there or something that may be right here. You're deciding whether the image is threatening or not threatening. Like I can look at that telephone, and I'm looking at the text, and I could look at the telephone, and there's some text on there, and none of those texts right there are threatening. So I'm looking at an image. I'm getting an image of a phone with text on it. There's no sympathetic response from that right there. But if I got a text all of a sudden from somebody who was mad at me, or I got a text from Leslie saying something's wrong at home, or I got some sort of like text, now the image that I am looking at has to go through the part of my brain that determines whether or not I'm having a fight or flight response or a rest and recover response. Right? What flashes back to me is checking my national board scores. When you take the national board test and you're in chiropractic school, and it's a big deal because you got to pass those national board tests, which I passed them all on the first try. Yes, thank you. Most people do, but um, at least at Parker College, a lot of people did. But when you get that test, you have to go to the website and then you have to log in, and it'll take you to your page. And the answer, your test score is like down the page a ways. So you have to scroll. You have to scroll down, and then you're watching all that. You're watching all that, and then finally you get down right to the bottom. And I didn't even want to go a little further. It's like I just wanted to kind of stop right there and just be like, ugh. But then it's like jumping in a swimming pool, cold water. You just got to go quickly, right? So I just rolled it down real quick, and I looked, and I was like, oh, thank you, right? All that was just cut. That was sight into my brain with the symphony that's going on in the brain, and then all the stuff that was that's going on behind the brain, right? Here's another picture of it right here. That's what I was talking about, like spatial memory, prediction, reflexive saccades or inhibition. Saccades are moving your eyes quickly back and forth, right? So there's a bunch of things that are going on in the brain. There's a bunch of areas of the brain that are involved in sight and eye movement and coordination with multiple areas of your brain. So you get these different things like gaze stability or accommodation or convergence or divergence or nearsightedness, saccades and pursuits. There's like terminology that goes along with what's happening inside your head with your eyes. So those are the ones we went. So you can see this picture gives you which of those muscles fire when you do that sort of movement. So if I'm just going to look straight to the left, I'm just going to take my eyes and I'm just going to go straight to the left. Then my left lateral rectus and my right medial rectus are going to fire together. And the same thing goes the opposite if I want to take my eyes straight to the right. Now, depending on how quickly I do that is going to depend on which part of the brain is working. And remember, we went over this last week. Pursuits is slow eye movement. So if I'm looking at something over at the left, I've got my left lateral rectus muscle and my right medial rectus muscle firing because I'm looking over at the left. And now, as I move across right here, pursuits are being pulled. So that's my parietal lobe. That's the upper lobe in the back. That's my parietal lobe that's responsible for moving those eyes like that. But now, if I'm looking over here to the left, and now I want to quickly look to you on the screen, and then I want to quickly look back to the left, that's my frontal lobe. That's called a saccade, and that's a different movement. It's a quick eye movement. So now I'm quickly going to move here, and I'm quickly going to move there, and the frontal lobe is like that's that executive center that like wants to know quickly about what's going on. It's like, hey, look, I need to know right now. Like I need to know right now I need to make a decision quickly. If I'm watching something move across there, it's like, well, that's kind of more of a beauty thing, right? It's like, or I'm tracking it, but I'm not really tracking it for danger, or I don't need to make an executive decision on something. If I'm watching a bird fly across the sky, I don't necessarily need an executive decision for that. But if I'm looking at you, I'm driving down the road and I'm looking at a car over here and I'm looking at another one there and I'm looking back over here. Now that frontal lobe gets involved, and that's a saccade, right? So you can have the same muscles firing with different parts of the brain that are responsible for that. Another thing you can do, I think it's in here shortly. Yeah, here's an example of it, the vestibular ocular reflex. So now it's like, now we get the vestibular system involved, and we move the head. So I'm going to look at you, but I'm going to turn my head, and then I'm going to do it really quickly, and I'm going to see if I can keep my eyes on the camera while I turn my head. And that's my eyes are moving, but my eyes are actually locked on the camera, and my head turns to the left. So what is happening? Well, if my eyes are locked on the camera and my head turns to the left, then what I'm doing is I'm firing my right lateral rectus and my left medial rectus. And there's somewhere in here, I don't remember exactly which, there it is right there. There's a vestibular system. When you turn your head in one direction, so if I turn my head to the left, but I keep my eyes on you, then what happens is I'm going to activate the brain. The vestibular system is going to fire into this area of the brain, and it's going to activate the one set of muscles, and it's going to inhibit the other set of muscles. That's where it gets into my bicep and my tricep that I was talking about just a second ago. So I'm gonna fire that in. I'm gonna do that quickly, and I'm gonna do that quickly. Like I could turn my head quickly, but I can keep my eyes right on the camera. Well, that system is coming from my ear. So I can ask you to sit here, and I can ask you, can you move your eyes back and forth? Okay, that's one brain system. That's one neural pathway from your brain to your eyeballs. Well, another one is, can you keep your eyes still and move your head back and forth? That's another system. That's the vestibular system that is working. And that has a lot to do, a lot of this comes into play, and we start to lose our balance. We start to get vertigo. We start to have issues of ear ringing, and we all of these things that are related to these systems. That those things are things that we don't necessarily understand. It's like, man, I'm starting to lose. I'm getting a little unbalanced, right? Like, or I got vertigo. Like, what's going on? Like, whoa, what are my eyes? If you've ever experienced the Epley maneuver, like if you actually do have crystals in your ears that have gotten out of place, and they put you on your back, tilt your head back, and then turn your head. They do the Epley maneuver with your eyes open. So that's a way of looking, because you can move the head in a certain direction, and then those crystals will move through those canals, and when they move through those canals, they will fire your eyes, and your eyes will just start jumping back and forth, because that crystal is firing all those nerves as it's floating through that canal. And that is it's related, right? That's basically what I'm trying to say. So there's the vestibular ocular reflex. The cervico-ocular reflex is a reflex eye response that is elicited by rotation of the neck. So now you've got this whole thing going on. And then the optokinetic reflex, and that's what we use when we have the little red and white tape that we use and move it back and forth, right? Those are reflexes. There's so much now. If you think about this, now start thinking about the posture that is related to what's going on with your eyes, and how your eyes are going to try to set your body in order to get the best picture. And I mentioned this before, but this actually, the first date that Leslie and I went to the movies, I sat on her left, and she sat on the right. And we sat down in the movie theater, and I was a gentleman, and there was no hanky-panky going on in the movie theater, unlike maybe other times. I'm not going to get into that, but not with me. But so I sat down next to her, and we started watching the movie, and she immediately turned her body away from me. Like she just rotated. she just rotated almost with her back to me. It's like it was just like sort of turned. And I was sitting there and I just kind of looked at her and I was like, wow, maybe she's not into this. This whole date thing. It's like maybe she didn't like me. I don't know. I couldn't understand it. And so we got done and we got back in the car and I said, was there something wrong? Like, did I do something wrong, or is there an issue or something? And she's like, no, why? And I was like, well, as soon as the movie started, you turned your body away from me. And she was like, I'm so sorry. She's like, my left eye is weak. And so I had to turn my body. I always turn my head to get my left eye closer to the screen to make my vision work better. And I was like, well, note to self, from now on, I'll sit on the other side. And that's what I did. From that point forward, I always sat on her right side. So now she turns and faces me instead of turning away from me. But look at you look at the guy in the picture here, and it's like, what my glasses are doing. Like if I'm trying to read something, and I look at it, and I'm just like, I got to get my glasses just right so that I can get focused on what's on the screen, right? Well, what am I doing to my head and my neck? Or what if I was trying to look and I'm typing? I talked to one of my guys today that we were talking about doing cervical tractioning, and we got him a traction unit, and he's an engineer, and he spends a lot of time at a computer. So what is he doing with his eyes, and then trying to get his eyes in the right spot so that he can see the computer screen, but then his head ends up going forward. And I think I have a picture of that. Yeah, this is kind of an idea of it. And these are, of course, Dr. Hall's slides right here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go through those. That's Dr. Hall, by the way. Yeah, so there's a picture of it. So here's a picture of a lady looking at a laptop, and she's typing. She's sitting at looks like a desk, or she could be at a table or something. But and she's typing, and look where we've put ourselves, right? Look where the posture that's related to the eyeball, and the forward head posture that goes along with it. There's another one right there. Abnormal head posture associated with hyperopia. Abnormal head posture may be adapted for ocular or non-ocular reasons. The most common ocular reason are to maintain binocularity and to obtain the best possible visual acuity. And then it's just so you can get your eyes on it right? That's this whole forward head posture. And when I say forward head posture, I'm talking about the distance from the shoulder to the ear. If you were to draw a line right in the middle of the shoulder, and then you were to draw a line to the ear, the middle of the ear, is that forward? Or is it straight up? Where are your shoulders? That's why we do in the office, after you get adjusted, we go in and do our overhead touches. And we want our overhead touches to touch right above our head. But part of the reason we do those overhead touches is, and we reach at the top of the overhead touches, is because we want to be able to get the lats involved in that whole thing so that we can bring our head and shoulders back up. It's part of our brain rehab that goes back to the different ways the different stimulus that we use to try to fire the brain in those areas, because this is very disruptive. And you get a forward head posture. For every 1 inch of forward head posture, you put an extra 10 pounds of pressure on your low back. If you just want to talk musculoskeletal, and you don't even want to talk neurology or physiology, you can just talk about musculoskeletal. You got what's called a stretch reflex. So whenever a muscle stretches, if I was the trap muscle on the back of the neck, and I'm attached to the base of the skull, and the skull is going forward, now I'm in contraction. So now if the head goes forward, all the muscles on the back of the neck are in contraction, and you'll get that spasm right there at the base of your skull. And when that spasms, it'll bring that headache right over to your eyeball. And we get those, it's like that, oh man, I got a headache right behind my eyeball right here. And it starts back here. And it's like, yeah, why? Because my skull is not sitting on my atlas properly, and my head's forward, and I've fatigued that whole thing. And it could be because of the way my eyes are functioning. Or we could take these type of things and say, hey, we need to run the pathways of the eye and try to get the eye to fire the way that it's supposed to fire. Because you'll end up with, a reverse cervical curve, and then that's going to set off all kinds of sympathetic response in your brain. It's going to be in anxiety and depression and concentration, and there's your acid reflux and all kinds of stuff that's going on right there, right? And then, before we're just about out of time, but a super important part of this whole thing is that we have field and activation, right? It's the field and activation is the part that we have to remember. So we have neural pathways, we have entire brain that's working, but then we also we have to be able to feel the brain. So we have to be able to keep the blood vessels open to the brain. So if we have some sort of blood supply issue to the brain, we might start having eye problems, especially if it's in that midbrain area. We might start having eye problems, and that might be an early sign that we have cardiovascular disease. Hey, I'm out of time. I hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday at 6. You guys take care.